Hello, everyone. For those who are joining us, we will begin momentarily. Thank you all for joining us. Just give us a few more seconds and we will begin. All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to say good evening to everyone. Welcome to the Hyde Park-Kenwood COVID-19 Community Forum. My name is Ali Amora, and I'll be your MC for tonight. Tonight's forum is being sponsored by the Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference, an organization that has served the Hyde Park-Kenwood and neighboring communities for over 70 years. I am honored to have been a board member since 2019. On behalf of the entire conference, we are excited to have you with us tonight. Tonight's forum is a chance for all of us to come together during this very hard time. It's a chance for us to see one another, to see our neighbors, to hold space for one another, and it's a chance to share how COVID-19 has affected our lives. It's also a chance for us to hear from our local officials and to get some questions answered. Now, before we begin, I'm going to quickly run through our schedule for tonight. First, from 6 to 7, we are going to invite members of our community who have signed up to be a speaker to share their stories of how COVID-19 has affected their lives. As a reminder, participants who signed up as a speaker will have 2 minutes to share their stories. We have a number of participants signed up to speak, so we ask that you keep your stories to the time limit of 2 minutes. In order to allow all speakers to have an equal chance to share their stories, your microphone will be muted when your time is up. Second, we are joined with several elected officials tonight, and from 7 to 8, each official will give a brief update. Then we will open it up to questions for the officials that have been submitted in advance. As a reminder for all of our speakers, please remember that this is a public forum. Out of respect for all of the participants, please use appropriate language and keep your comments to the topic of COVID-19. The Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference reserves the right to mute or remove participants for inappropriate comments or comments that do not relate to COVID-19. Once again, speakers will have 2 minutes to speak. I will announce the speaker one at a time. Please acknowledge yourself when I call your name by raising your hand in your Zoom app. The raise your hand button will be located, if you're on a desktop, on the bottom bar under the More tab. It may be located in other places if you are using other types of devices. If you do not respond when we call you, we will move on to the next speaker. Now, before we begin, I'd like to introduce Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference Board President, Phylyn Crawford. She would like to share a few words on behalf of the board. Phylyn. There you are. All right.
Good evening. Crawford, President of the Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Good evening. I'm Phylyn Crawford, President of the Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference. We want to thank the community for allowing us to serve for 70 years. On behalf of the conference, welcome to our virtual community forum. Welcome to friends and neighbors who know a lot about the history of the conference, and welcome to first-timers who just learned about us. We want to hear from you regarding your experience as it relates to the COVID-19 health crisis. It is our aim to provide a thoughtful and serious discussion. Please be mindful of your language. We must end your call if your language or your conduct is inappropriate. Let me be the first to share my COVID-19 experience. I work for the school district. My last day at work was Friday the 13th. I am also a small business owner. I own Tidy Housekeeping and Laundry Services, although many callers know me as the owner of Kimbark Laundry, formerly located on 53rd Street. The impact on my life through the school district and as a small business owner cannot be overstated. I look forward to the discussion with friends, neighbors, and elected officials. We thank you all for joining this call, and we hope the discussion will lead to policies and solutions that help us all. We want to thank our healthcare workers, our first responders, and our retail workers whose courage and expertise benefit us all as we all endure the pandemic. Please help us further our mission. Join, volunteer, donate at hydepark.org. Right now, I'd like to bring back the moderator for the first part of our discussion, Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference board member, Ali Amora.
Thank you, Phylin. All right, everybody, so we're gonna dive right into it. We're gonna move on to our community speakers for tonight. So we would like to welcome our first speaker. And when you are introduced, please introduce yourself, and you will have 2 minutes to share your story. And our first speaker, we would like to invite Lakeisha to please raise your hand. All right, Lakeisha, are you with us? I think we're gonna
I'm
have.
here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. All right, Lakeisha,
Hi.
go ahead. Welcome.
Okay, thank you so much. Good evening, Hyde Park. How are you all doing? My experience with COVID-19 and 2 children at home, well, you can already imagine we're making it. But I wanted to get on the call today because my inbox is being filled with questions from our elders in the community. They're wondering how can they benefit from the resources when they're bedridden from medical and or they're just not as mobile. So I wanted to get on and speak on the behalf of our elders in the community, and I hope that the public officials will be able to assist me in answering that question, such as when the food is being distributed, will someone be able to go to that spot and pick up on behalf of someone else? Usually when food pantry does a delivery, you have to show your ID, social security card, and you have to be present. So I'm hoping that the resources in the Hyde Park-Kenwood area would be a little more lenient so that people can work on behalf of their neighbors. Thank you all so much for all that you're doing, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Lakeisha. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your concerns. And please stay with us. After our community share, we are going to be inviting our elected officials who will hopefully answer many of our questions that we have. Okay, thank you once again. We will move on to our next speaker. We would like to invite Wallace. If Wallace could please raise your hand, we will acknowledge you. Wallace, are you with us? Wallace, can you hear us? We can't hear you. All right, Wallace, it looks like there may be some technical difficulties. Oh, there you are. Wallace, can you say something so we can hear you? We cannot hear you, Wallace. Wallace, you know what? We can't hear you right now. So what I'll do is I will come back to you while you figure that out, okay? So why don't we move on to the next speaker? We'll come back to you, Wallace. Excellent, good. So why don't we move on to our next speaker while Wallace gets his connection fixed. Nikelsia, with Nikelsia, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing any names. All right, so Nikelsia is up. Hi, Nikelsia, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining us. Please, 2 minutes are yours.
Yes, first of all, I want to thank the people that have conducted this forum. Thank you for creating a platform for us to share our issues, our needs in the community. My name is Nikelsia Marcelin. I'm a veteran. I served in the military for 10.5 years. And now I am an entrepreneur here in the city of Chicago. As a veteran that has served the military and now serving my community, this COVID-19 is truly tragic for someone that has gone to war. I know that this is like a war. This is an issue where we don't know when the date is going to end, but we are all praying for solutions and praying that, you know, that all of us come out on the other side. As a veteran and someone that has a company called Veteran One Stop Shop, Veteran One Stop Shop is an organization that helps organizations with grant writing, to help develop their business development and other structures within their business. And currently the biggest issue that I'm having is that our community was not ready for a pandemic that would affect us in interacting with one another. A lot of the clients that I interact with are people that are elders that need one-on-one training on how to operate the computer, how to log into certain websites, how to submit for certain grants and other needs, whether it be federal contracts and stuff like that. So navigating through that system is what I specialize in, and not being able to interact with people on one-on-one has been a big concern, and it's kind of slowed down business for me. So that's kind of one of the issues that I'm seeing. Another issue is that there's not any community activities. So our city, like our community aldermen and community organizers, there's nothing happening for the children. There's nothing happening for the adults. There's ways for us to still interact without necessarily touching one another. And I just think that that's something that I think needs to be more addressed, because I noticed that other communities outside of the city of Chicago, in other states and in other counties, are practicing ways to create a healthy environment, and that is group activities that still create social distancing. Block, you know, there was one block that was in another state that did a scavenger hunt for Easter egg, you know, during the holidays, but they stayed in their actual areas and they didn't violate any social distancing rules. But it
We're
allowed
running
us
up on time a little bit, Nikelsia. And I apologize to cut you off, but no, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for your service, and thank you to all of our veterans, really, and especially being able to give us you know, that feedback and how you relate to it. It's very valuable for us to hear. So thank you, Nikelsia.
Oh, thank you. It's
Right.
a pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to move on to our next speaker, Robert, and from the Illinois Grassroots Coalition Chicago. Please raise your hand, Robert, if you are with us. Okay, we will, I don't see Robert's hands raised, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the next speaker in the list. Leanna from Hyde Park Dog Walking and Pet Care LLC. Leanna, if you are with us, please raise your hand. All right. I do not see Leanna's hands raised. We'll move on to Mary from Strides for Peace. Is Mary with us? All right, we will move on to Valerie from Moms Demand Hyde Park Southside. Is Valerie with us? All right, and I do not see Valerie, so we will move on to, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it, She Tiara from Taxes Prepared by Terry. All right, we'll move on to Zanette. Zanette from HPKCC. Zanette Sanders, who is on the call. No, okay. We're just going to go down through the list, and if you are here and present, please do raise your hands. Kimberly from SEIU HCIMK. Kimberly. All right, we'll move on to Rosario. All right, we will move on to Natasha. Raise your hand for public education. All right. Natasha is with us. Hi, Natasha. You're muted at the moment.
Good evening.
Good evening, Natasha. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting. And, this is, really, I just want to give a roll up of 4 weeks that we've been holding meetings across local school councils, parents, community groups. We started March 26th, and this coming Thursday will be our 5th meeting. And what has continued to, I guess, be the longest poles in the tent are around the inequities. And I want to be very clear that I'm speaking about education, right? And schools and how COVID-19 is impacting the people. And so what continues to come up is a technology divide that has not yet been cured in a myriad of ways. Not only are schools getting laptops, if a student gets a laptop or a device, what is the internet deficiency, or there are internet deficiencies across the city, particularly on the far south side. And so while we see other cities have done things like create hubs on school buses and have brought internet to the community, we've not yet seen that on the south side. So if there's any influence that could be done there, would be great. I'm not sure the Kenwood community might be okay in this, but I'm just talking about the influence, and for the representatives that are on the line, it would be great. And then the communication divide, right? And so while some families responded to a survey and said that they needed a piece of technology, they're asked to come to the school and pick that up. Well, for some families that have multiple children at multiple schools, it is impossible, and those technology devices have not been picked up, and we're well into remote learning. And so it's not just the story of who doesn't have, it's the inequities that were already there. It reconfirms the notion that when America catches the flu, Black and poor folks catch pneumonia. And that is quite honestly, why it's also baffling that local school councils have not been more engaged in the decision-making process from the district. That could also, there are a lot of ideas and suggestions out here. So, I'll wrap up with saying, if there's any influence that we can get better communication throughout the community to those that might not be online, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Yeah, and thank you for your comments, and thank you for all of the parents who are here. Our family has children who've been remote learning, and it has been a struggle for so many of us, and it's so much more of a struggle for those families who do not have access to the technology that some of us may have. So thank you so much for bringing that up and for sharing with us tonight. All right, we are going to move on to our next speaker, Andy from the Jackson Park Advisory Council. Andy is with us. All right. We'll give us a second. Andy will. All right. Andy, are you with us? Still muted. You're still with us. Yeah, there you go, Andy. There you go. All right, Andy, thank you so much. Go ahead, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. In these really scary, difficult times that we are all experiencing, I wanted to share a bit of a silver lining to this dark cloud. Get it better. So my wife and I, prior to the virus, we're both retired, and she was a member at the Y, and I was a member at LA Fitness, and we had our workout routines as good retired folks do, and but once the sheltering in started, we had to make changes, and so we started walking around Hyde Park, and it's a beautiful place to see all the things that are blooming everywhere. In Amanda's garden is a beautiful place to go, but a place that we have particularly become fond of is Washington Park. We walk there, and the wildlife is quite diverse and interesting. Yesterday, we saw this beautiful gray heron actually catch a fish in the lagoon. And so I think that even in these hard times, there are ways to find to enjoy the outdoors that we have. And I guess the specific concern I would like to bring up is about the parks. And I'm wondering if, well, another place that we love to walk is the Wooded Island. It's gorgeous. And I'm wondering when that will be opened back up. And also a question I have is it necessarily connected to opening up the paths along the lakefront? It seems like to me it's a little bit separated, and I'm hoping there might be some sort of phased opening of the public parks that at this particular time, I think they're so valuable for people to be able to get outside. And once again, I'll make a plug for go to Washington Park. It's great, and enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Andy. And thank you for your comments. I think it's on all of our minds, right? I think we haven't thought about how we, really take advantage of the nature that is around us. So once again, thank you for your comment. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our next speaker, Christopher.
Excuse me, Ali. Actually, it should be Wallace Good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get back to Wallace. Yes, Wallace. Thank you, Barbara. Wallace, good. We'll go to Wallace first, and hopefully we'll be able to hear Wallace. All right, Wallace, you're still muted. Can you unmute?
Are we there?
Yes, now we can hear you. All right, Wallace.
All
Thank
right.
you.
First
Take
of all,
it away.
thank you very much, Ali. It's been very interesting to hear what people are bringing to the table. As the head of the Hyde Park Chamber of Commerce, my focus is primarily on business, the health of Hyde Park's commercial community. But as I listen to people talk about the impact on education, I think we need to think about what we should be doing when it comes to our seniors, not only in housing, but individual housing. And I spoke with a very good friend of mine who is a pastor who said Sundays have become the loneliest day for him. He is not obviously having service and there's no one there. So I think that's a very interesting perspective when we think about the various ways that this is impacting all of us. And again, it's been great to hear other perspectives, let alone our own. I'm isolated at home with my wife and dog, and I'm actually enjoying that. So that's not really a problem at all. Funding concerns, obviously payroll and rent are concerns for my businesses, and coming up with strategies which they are asking everyone to think about, ways that they can be supportive of local businesses and local non-for-profits that aren't making money and who has funds right now. So my question that I throw out, and that's sort of where we leave it, is defining what does returning to normal look like. I'm already thinking about the next stage of where we need to be as we open up our businesses, as we think about social events, as we get back to the norm. What are those things looking like, and who is consciously leading that kind of change? We're going to be changing our way that we socialize. We're going to be changing our way that we communicate. We're going to be changing our ways that we build community. And I guess I'm encouraging all of us to begin to think about that and share those strategies, exactly what you're doing today, Ali. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
For the conference.
And thank you, Wallace. And I think that's a question that a lot of us have on our minds right? What will it look like when we get back to normal? What will normal be? And there's a lot of fear and anxiety and apprehension for that. So thank you so much for bringing that up, and thank you so much for being here.
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and as you all can see in your apps, we have about 114 participants with us tonight. So we have a lot of people listening. We're going to move on to our next speaker, Christopher. If you're here, please raise your hand in the Zoom app. All right. Okay, we'll move on to the next speaker then. Mary from the Midway Placements Advisory Council. Mary's raised her hand. All right. Mary, you're still muted.
Am I unmuted now?
You are unmuted now. Welcome, Mary. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I really want to follow up on what Wallace was talking about, because I think a lot of us, as we're sitting at home and interacting with others, are really trying to figure out what normal is going to be. I've been involved over the past few weeks with several organizations that have had to make some very difficult decisions about the way they operate. One of them is the 57th Street Art Fair, which came to the sad conclusion that it had to cancel this year's fair. The first time in 72 years that that's happened. The other is the Hyde Park School of Dance, which its business is in studio instruction. So in a 2-week period of time, it had to figure out how to move from having 450 students in its studios to having virtual classes. And then the question becomes, how long will that go on? I've also seen the amazing generosity of neighbors who are doing everything from sewing masks to provide masks and gowns for the local hospitals, to thinking up inventive ways of keeping children interactive. I don't know if you've heard about the bear hunt, which has been going on in Hyde Park, where people have been putting bears in their windows so that families going out for a walk and go hunting for bears.
Yeah.
As Andy had indicated and Wallace had indicated, where do we go from here? One of the things that I'm most interested about is as the parks open up again, that maybe we've learned new ways and more gentle ways of exercising and appreciating nature and appreciating our neighborhoods. One of the other things that I'm very much involved in is through the Midway Plaisance, we've put together a committee to look at rejuvenating the bike paths through the parks, so that the Midway can become a conduit from the lakefront to Washington Park. So I'm hoping that that's something else that I can get others interested in over time, and that when we come to the new normal, being outside in nature will be an important part of it. Thank you
so much. Thank you so much, Mary. And you know, I think this is, once again, it's on all of our minds. And you know, you mentioned the Hyde Park School of Dance. I have family members who we've been taking advantage of some of those virtual classes. And it's definitely a new norm, but we're wondering when we're getting back to the old norm. So once again, thank you for being with us, and thank you so much for your comments, Mary. All right, we're going to move on to our next speaker, Helena.
Ali,
Yes.
before that, I want to announce that our hashtag for this event is Hyde Park COVID-19 Forum. If you could use that on your social media accounts, and visit our website at www.hydepark.org.
Thank you so much, Barbara. So yes, please use that hashtag and visit our websites at www.hydepark.org. All right, moving on to our next speaker, Helena. Is Helena with us? If you are, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. And we'll get you on right now. Okay. You're
Yeah.
unmuted now. Hi, welcome, Helena.
Thank you. My name is Helena Duncan, and I live in Hyde Park. And my ex-boyfriend and I actually live together, and almost half of our income goes towards rent. And he lost his retail job because of COVID-19. It was a job he'd only had for 2 weeks, so he's got no income. And while I'm fortunate enough to have kept my day job, I've lost some supplemental income that I do from gig work, childcare, due to the virus as well. We live in a Mac Properties building, which is a landlord that is refusing to even, negotiate waiving rent with tenants without having them first sign a non-disclosure agreement, which is outrageous. Still we have a lot of privilege. We're not at risk of going hungry, having to forfeit the essentials like, food or prescriptions in order to make rent. But there are so many people, so many of my neighbors who are not as fortunate. Mac tenants are literally on a rent strike because they have no other options. And, recently Mayor Lightfoot issued checks to 2,000 renters to provide rent relief, and over 80,000 people applied for those, 80,000. So the relief that is available is woefully insufficient. So what can we do? The city of Chicago is prevented from enacting any kind of rent freeze because of a statewide rent control ban. So I need my representatives who are on this call, Alderman Hairston, Senator Peters, Representative Tarver, I need you to urge Governor Pritzker to use his authority under the Emergency Powers Act to lift the ban on rent control. He does have that legal authority, and to institute an immediate rent and mortgage freeze for at least the duration of the crisis and 3 months afterwards. I need you to take this step. It's long overdue. We must lift the rent control ban and enact a rent and mortgage freeze. If you care about your constituents being able to make rent, this is what you need to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helena, for joining us. Thank you for your comments. And thank you for reminding us that, even in our own difficulties and how this has affected us, there's others who have been even worse off affected than we have. That's why we've put together this forum. We have our elected officials, and hopefully some of our questions are going to be answered. So once again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our next speaker, Raquel from Black Women Organizing for Power Chicago. Is Raquel here? If you are, please raise your hand. All right, okay, there we are. And we are waiting for Raquel to come on. Raquel, are you there? No, okay, we will move on to the next speaker. And Raquel, if you are there and something happened, we can come back to you. All right, Paulette from Coldwell Banker. Is Paulette with us? All right, Paulette is with us. I do see Raquel. If you are still with us, I see you logged back in. Raise your hand if you would like to speak, or we will move on and get back to you at the end. Okay, thank you. All right, you're still muted. Raquel, you're still muted. Okay, all right, can you hear us?
Yes,
right,
I'm
you.
so
Welcome.
sorry.
That's okay, welcome, welcome.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Raquel Mckee. I am a high school English teacher. I live in the Washington Park area. So just to briefly summarize my own COVID-19 experience, I'm of two minds. One is that I reflect almost daily on the certain amount of class privilege that I have to feel relatively stable throughout this crisis, right? I have stable employment. My husband and I, we own our condo, so we are okay on that front. But what continuously is heavy on my heart is the folks throughout Black Chicagoland that are being disproportionately impacted by this crisis. From a few weeks ago, when the statistics revealed that 72% of those who lost their lives due to this crisis were Black, I have been just like very heavily emotionally impacted by that, and constantly wondering, how can it be? How can we allow this kind of injustice to occur? But then it really strikes me that really what we are seeing now is our chickens coming home to roost. We have been comfortable with these pervasive racial inequities since the existence of this city. And so now we are seeing all of the divesting of resources that has been systematically done to Black Chicagoland. We are now seeing the result of that. So I'm going to end my commentary with an invitation to anyone who is watching or listening. I have founded a group called Black Women Organizing for Power, BWOP, and we have created a petition of demands, specific policy measures that we would like to see taken both at the state and city level.
We're about out of time, so if you could just wrap up the last sentence, Raquel, thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. Please find BWOP Chicago on Facebook and Twitter for more information. Thank you
So much. Thank you. And thank you, Raquel, for also reminding us about how many people have been affected physically with their health, and how many people have lost their lives, and how many people have lost friends and loved ones during this time. It's very important for us to remember that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to our next speaker, Paulette from Coldwell Banker. No, okay. We will move on then to Robin Kaufman. If you are here, please raise your hands. Robin Kaufman. All right. We will move on to our next speaker then, Stephen Brown. Stephen, if you're here, please raise your hand. All right, we will move on to our next speaker, Aiko from Bret Hart Elementary. Is Aiko with us? All right. Aiko's raising their hand. All right. Wait a second for Aiko to get unmuted. All right, Aiko, we can hear you. You're unmuted now.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for joining us.
Great, thank you very much for the opportunity. So as Natasha from Raise Your Hand talked about, I'm concerned about this, this impact on the students' learning environment. And then as a Bret Hart LSC, I want to talk about how the local schools are going, what local schools are undergoing in Hyde Park area. So I appreciate that the district is district announced that they're going to provide 100,000 devices to the schools, and which is, to be honest, it's inadequate to deliver to all students. So districts are prioritize the area that the poverty is concentrated. And then I appreciate that the CPS is addressing this in a very equitable way, but that leaves Hyde Park schools almost, I believe no schools in Hyde Park will be qualified to receive any devices from the CPS at this moment. So each school has to loan out their own devices to their students. And then, so each student will sign on the contract, but that's not enforceable. And then to be honest, we really don't know. I mean, after many months of use, when the school will be reopened, the device will be returned, or if returned damaged. And as for those devices, there will be no clear written plan issued by the CPS. So if that was a damage or needs to be replaced, we expect that each school has to do that. So in Bret Hart case, we have already loaned out more than 80 devices, the Chromebook. And if And we are calculating that if we have, then those devices were old anyway. We were talking about we needed to
We're just
update.
about out of time, Aiko, so if you can wrap up with the last sentence.
Right, so I just want to know that if the elected officials are willing to address these issues for the schools, school that has to take care of this, the device gap by themselves, how the community can support us. And we are also doing a device drive. I'm gonna put the donation link on the comments, so please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aiko. And I believe our last speaker shared very similar concerns. Definitely, hopefully we can address that tonight with our officials as well. So thank you once again for speaking.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to our next speaker. Sorry about that. Okay, so do we have James from Cumbia Housing Cooperative? Please raise your hands. James, you there?
Hi.
Hi, welcome. All right, take it away, sir.
Hey, yeah, my name is Michael. First name is James, but I work at the Experimental Station in Woodlawn. I'm also part of the Southside Weekly, which covers a lot of this area as well. We've put out some community resources that people can find that have been doing a lot of sort of coverage of COVID as well. But I also live in an affordable housing cooperative called Cumbia Housing Co-op. We have 3 co-ops within Hyde Park. We're housing groups where a collection of people of variety of generations, races, genders, sexual identities all come together, live in community, and we've been practicing, even despite the fact that many of our homes have more than 10 people living together, we all practice social distancing, we're all being quite safe. But we also, since we're democratically run, are able to give rent forgiveness for members who need it. And I think that's something that we find to be really important, to be able to support people as they need and where they're at, but we can't do this for everyone. And so we definitely need our elected officials to be finding like short-term solutions for, as Helena brought up earlier, lifting the ban on rent control. But also, like, there have been all sorts of issues with members not being able to sort of file for unemployment readily. And we just need sort of long-term solutions that are systemically being revealed by this current process. I saw all sorts of workers when I went to go to Walmart, they are not being protected. And I just also want to be aware that a lot of the people on this call are not some of these frontline workers. They're not, so they're people who have orgs and business people. And I really want to sort of make sure that we are highlighting those people who aren't able to sort of attend meetings like this. And so, yeah, and one other thing that I'll add, and I sort of asked the CPS teacher that works here, is that, like, I want to reiterate, like, internet access is crucial in this moment. It is so important just to be a member of society right now. And it is a problem for people at the nonprofit where I work. It's a problem for students that, like, our people that teach here have. And so just making sure that we have equitable access to be able to maintain function.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Michael. We would not be able to have this call, right, without internet access. We have 116 people who are participating tonight, which is wonderful. But every one of us can participate. Some of us are calling in, but many of us who are on the call can only participate because of our internet access. So it's definitely something that we should not take for granted and something we need to talk about. And one of the reasons why we are having this event tonight. So thank you once again so much for joining us and for sharing your thoughts, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We will move on to our next speaker. I do believe I saw Robin. Robin?
Cy Lewis is next.
Okay. Cy. Okay. Yes. Then we will turn it over to Cy from Meadows Eastside Community Resource Organization. If you are here, please raise your hand. Okay. All right, Cy, you're still muted. All right, Cy, you're unmuted. Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Thank you so much for joining us. Please go ahead.
Okay, well, my name is Cy Lewis, and one of the things that I wanted to talk to is about the morbidity rate that we have on the southeast side. I'm very concerned about the amount of death that we're having over on the southeast side and how we're going to deal with that moving forward. I know that the mayor has got a team out, an epidemiology team out, to try to address some of those issues. But as I can see from my window on most days, especially when it's warmer outside, we have a very high level of people just out and about, milling about, standing on the corners and going about business as usual, as if there isn't a pandemic going on. And my fear is that because we don't have a statewide or a mandated covering of our faces or wearing a mask, a lot of these people who are just moving about freely as if nothing is going on are then going into social spaces and not distancing and going shopping into stores and basically contaminating or putting at risk people like maybe you or myself who are covering up and then going back into the general public again and making people ill. And so it's turning into a vicious cycle. So I'm wondering how we're going to be able to advocate on a larger scale to get something done. The mayor spoke today about moving into June with being home quarantined. And so if you could give us any information on how we're going to address these issues.
Thank you, Cy. You know, and that's our next portion is coming up in about 13 minutes, where we're joined with some of our elected officials who are going to address all of us and hopefully answer some of these questions. You know, it's on my mind when I walk out and I see, you know, more people than I'm used to seeing currently outside, and I have those same thoughts in my mind. So thank you once again, Cy, for sharing, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our next speaker, Tom. Is Tom with us? All right, Tom. Yes, there you are. Okay, we'll wait for Tom to get on. All right. Tom is with us. Tom is muted. Tom, you are unmuted. Not yet.
Okay, well, here we go.
All right, there you go. Can you hear us?
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yes. My name's Tom Pinellas. I've lived in Hyde Park for 40-something years, and I really want to just amplify some of the things that Helena and Raquel and Michael said about economic relief, particularly having to do with housing. I mean, there's so much economic hardship here with this crisis, and there are so many things that could be done, that need to be done. But I think that the quickest way to help people in many cases would be relief on housing. And that's why I would like to urge our elected officials to get rid of this horrible law that bans rent control in Illinois. I understand there was a legal opinion by Len DePray's, the late Len DePray's old law firm, a great Hyde Parker, that the law can be vacated by the governor even in the absence of the legislature meeting. So I hope he will do that, and I hope our representatives, Representative Tarver and Senator Peters and others, will urge the governor to do that. We have to get rid of this ban on rent control in Chicago, and we have to start regulating and controlling the rents. The rent is too damn high. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. And thank you for echoing some of the sentiments that we've already heard tonight. This is on a lot of people's minds, it's one of the highest concerns that we have. You know, to be able to live securely in a place so that we don't get displaced. So thank you so much for your comment. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our next speaker, Marshall. We'd like to invite Marshall. Marshall, if you are on the call with us. All right, Marshall is with us. We need to. All right, Marshall, you are unmuted. Can you hear us?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much,
Hi,
Marshall.
how are you?
Welcome.
So my name's Marshall Callery. I'm an actor. I do a lot of work with the Hyde Park Chamber of Commerce and many small businesses around Hyde Park and Bronzeville. Some ways that this has affected me and my friends, we started to realize how much physical contact means actually, because we're not used, well, we're on technology a lot, but this has really affected all of us because we have jobs and we can't go to those. Movie theaters have been shut down, Dave & Buster's, places like that, and it's really affected us. Also, it's actually helped some of my friends actually because we've done things like drawing contests and things that we haven't really done to help us move through this. Also, my neighbors and our whole block, Lake Park, does this band thing every day for 30 minutes where we play music and people dance on their porches. That's really helped us. Cars stop, honk, and it's really helped me go through this. And I believe that we can all get through this if we push and push. And yes, that's all.
Thank you so much, Marshall. And you know, we've done that on my street. We've come out, some of our neighbors onto our porch, and you know, we've just seeing a friendly face and seeing a neighborly face or hearing music on the street. You know, one of my cousins does that on her street as well. So you know, this is something that we can replicate. So thank you so much, and you know, thank you for the ideas, and thank you for being here, Marshall.
Thank you.
All right, we are at 6:52. We are going to try to get in 3 to 4 more speakers before we'll move on to the next portion of our program. So let's see, we'll go to Robert Mckee. Do we have Robert Mckee on? If you are on, please raise your hand. All right, we'll move on. Leanna. All right, Mary. Is Mary here from Strides for Peace? All right, we'll move on to Valerie. Valerie from Moms Demand Hyde Park. Okay, we will move on to Shai Tiara. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. Oh, Valerie.
Valerie's on.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you. Valerie, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, I don't really have any real issues right now. None that are more important than what's going on with COVID-19 in the African American and Hispanic community. So I appreciate the efforts that Hyde Park is putting forward to hear the voices of the community residents and try to help in whatever way they can.
All right, well, thank you so much, Valerie. And it's really our pleasure and our honor to be able to put this on, to be able to amplify your voice and amplify voices of our community, especially when we can't do this in person. So once again, thank you so much for being here, Valerie.
Absolutely. And I stated I represent Moms Demand, and gun violence isn't stopping just because we're in a pandemic.
That's absolutely true. So once again, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to our next speaker, Zanette Saunders. Is Zanette here? Zanette has raised her hand. All right, we'll wait for Zinette to connect. All right, Zinette is on. Zinette, can you hear us? We can't hear you yet.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you a little bit. Can you make it a little bit louder?
Sure, hold on. Okay, is this better?
Much, much better. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Zinette. Welcome.
Hi. Yeah, thank you. I'm calling and I'm sort of I'm with the Hyde Park Community Action Council, and we sort of represent a lot of the schools in the Hyde Park-Kenwood area. And my concern right now is really parents. I really feel that the parents are overloaded. The parents, they are, some are working from home and they only have one computer, and then the kids need a computer. And the normal instruction for a child, let's say, is 6 hours in a day. And now that has now been reduced to maybe 1 hour a day. And I think the parents are trying to do their day-to-day job, but then they're also trying to, you know, be a teacher. They're also trying to still be a mother, be a wife. And I feel that the parents right now need extended support. And I want to know, you know, what can be done to help parents, because they're now just stretched in every single direction. And that's my big concern right now, is that, and as well as the instruction of the students. Like you said, if you're normally learning 6 hours a day, and now you're only learning 1 hour a day, and then when you're on the screen for 1 hour a day, you're just sort of waving at each other and, you know, showing stuffed animals. I'm sort of concerned about the instruction for the child. How does that equate to, you know, the normal 6 hours a day that you're getting? So between that and the parents being taxed is the concern that I have.
Thank you so much, Zinette. And I will say, speaking as a parent who is working from home and homeschooling his children, it is taxing. It may be hard for me, but it is my children's education that I am most concerned with. So it's on a lot of our minds, and we need to talk about it. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Thank you so much for being here, Zinette.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, we are going to move on. We are almost at the next portion of our event. We have time for one more speaker. Unfortunately, we could not get to everyone, but we will have one more, and then we're going to hear from our elected officials. So at this point, we would like to see, is Kimberly here? If Kimberly is here, please raise your hand from SEIU. All right. Rosario. Rosario has raised their hand. All right, we'll wait for Rosario to get unmuted. Rosario, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you so much for being with us. Please go ahead.
Hello, thank you, and thank you for this great opportunity. My name is Rosario. I'm a student at the University of Chicago, and I'm one of the thousands or hundreds of students that live in the Hyde Park area. At this moment, there is a lot of uncertainties regarding what is going to happen. We have joined online schooling, but a lot of students, we have lost our jobs, and we have lost, for instance, the source of income that we used to have in order to pay our bills, our housing, our food, and so on. There is some help that is being provided for students, and some other students are having or increasing their debt because of this, and so on. So, and also we have students, such as my case, that even though I am from Peru, I'm been living here for at least 6 months or maybe more until the time my master's degree is over. And there is uncertainty because many of us are experiencing that our countries have locked down or closed the borders to go back. So And even though we are, trying to work with our embassies and our consulates in order to be able to stay in Chicago or in the U.S. while our visa it's allowing us to do, and go back to our countries as soon as we can, so we don't get into an illegal migration status. There is other people that, for instance, is not going to be able to do that. So I'm wondering, and also we need to recognize that we also have some illegal immigrants that are living in the area. Yeah. So I'm wondering how the authorities are taking care of these, for instance, contacting or engaging with organizations that can provide support for these people, because I know resources are limited, but we have other stakeholders and bodies that can provide support to these affected communities, mostly youths that, we are sure. Really established. We are still
at time, Rosario. Oh. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And that is definitely something that we are wanting to get answers to as well. I mean, many members of our community come from immigrant backgrounds. They are immigrants themselves. We want to thank you also for being here as a student, right? And to all the students who are with us tonight. You are part of our greater Hyde Park-Kenwood family. And so we want to welcome you all, and we hear your concerns as well. So thank you so much, Rosario.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for all of the comments and for sharing your stories. This wraps up our first portion of our Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference COVID-19 Forum. Once again, on behalf of the conference, I want to thank all of our participants who shared their stories with us today. It's a very difficult time for all of us. It's very difficult to be able to share and to be vulnerable, especially on a public forum. So I want to thank everyone who shared. And it's important for us to stay connected during this time, to see and hear from each other, and to know that we're not alone. So without going any further, for our next segment, I'd like to introduce Brian Glenn, a Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference member and small business owner. Brian will introduce our elected officials who will take turns addressing the forum. So without further ado, I give you Brian Glenn. Brian is with us.
Hi, Ali. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian.
So for this portion, we have all been diligently waiting for our elected officials, and so thankful that they were able to join us. I know that for most of us that are working during the day still remotely, it's difficult to break away, and I can tell you, I know that the elected officials have been on a lot of virtual forums and town halls over the past couple of weeks. I've noticed that. So right now, I'd like to get started and jump right in with the 4th Ward Alderman, Sophia King. Is Alderman King with us?
And if elected officials, if you could please raise your hand. I see Prentice Butler has raised his hand, so I presume that it's for Alderman King, and we will transition that way.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm just calling to let you know that Alderman King will be on just a moment. We have to get her the new link in order to get to me. So just give her a second. She'll be on in just a moment.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Perhaps we can go on. If Alderman Harrison is on, we could maybe circle back to Alderman King just so that we have enough time to make sure we can make it through all the questions. Is Alderman Harrison on by chance right now? Could you raise your hand? Alderman Harrison, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I can.
Hello, Alderman. How are you today?
I am good. It's been a long day.
Oh my goodness! I can tell you. I wanted to say I recall it was just a month ago that you were on WTTW talking about best practices, and practicing social distancing. And you probably did not think a month later that you would still have to talk about the same things in the neighborhood.
You know what? It is the most important discussion that we will have. I mean, among many. I actually came on earlier and was listening to some of the comments. And so first, let me just start by thanking the conference for putting this together. You are correct. There have been a series of virtual meetings, and I think that's very healthy for us to be engaged and to talk. I will be doing my ward meeting next week, next Tuesday. We are going to have our first virtual ward. Well, there's business to be done, and there are people that we want to support our people that want to go into business. And so there are some people that even during this climate need zoning changes. And so we want to continue to provide the service that we do, even though we are in a pandemic. And I know that Thursday, I'm losing track of the days, we've got a meeting in South Shore about the racial equity. I heard some of the callers talking about the racial disparities. That has been something that myself and other elected officials have been focusing on, not just local, but statewide and throughout the United States. We hosted a teleconference a few weeks ago. It was recorded on C-SPAN, because it is sad when you have a pandemic like this and you have the numbers that you have. And for the African Americans that are impacted, it's not surprising, right? Because of the years of disinvestment. And there have been those of us that have been, raising this issue over and over and over again over the years, only to be minimized. And then you add to that the systemic racism that has allowed to exist through our policies and our practices. And this is why that's why we're at this point, not just here in Chicago, not just in the state of Illinois, but throughout the United States.
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to ask, I know that, on the South Side, your ward has, well, you're my alderman, but our ward has some of the biggest draws in terms of like local concerts for the Chosen Few Picnic, the Silver Room, Block Club. And I know that, one announced that they weren't going to be able to do it this particular year because of COVID-19. But that leads to the question of what about park spaces? Is there a plan on perhaps phasing in at some point some of the at-large park spaces in our neighborhoods? Because a lot of people have been concerned about keeping the kids cooped up inside, and I know that you understand.
They're more than concerned. Thank goodness my godchildren are grown with children of their own. Yeah. But here's the thing: we hold the answer to that. If you will recall, the stay-in-place order came into effect because the first warm day, we congregated. We had football games with cheerleaders and everything else, or whatever, all the trimmings in Jackson Park, and people were not adhering to the social distancing. So I think the more that we begin to adhere to the social distancing, the more comfortable the mayor, the governor will feel about easing some of this up, because we understand the need. People need to be out. The kids need to have an opportunity to run around, ride their bikes, do things that kids do, just be outside in the fresh air, as well as adults. Okay. But we've got to do it responsibly. And I heard one of the callers talking about people still not practicing the social distancing. We have to do that. We have to do that. And we have to continue to educate people about that. We have to continue to educate people about washing their hands. This is real. I was talking to a lifelong friend of mine was diagnosed yesterday. Wow. It has touched every one of us. And so my hope is that we will continue to social distance, to wear masks, and then we can slowly lift some of the restrictions that have been placed upon us.
The last thing I want to ask before we move to Alderman King, and then at the end of all of our elected officials, we'll have Ali, our moderator, will come back in and ask some more of the questions that were asked ahead of time. But is there anything in particular that you feel that you would want to share kind of quickly with the community members that you maybe feel that needs to be said, that maybe has not been said, or maybe that you've been thinking about putting up on your website or is already there, someplace they can turn to?
So, you know, our office is definitely a resource. We have always been there. You know, we have the University of Chicago. We are working with our local partners. The University of Chicago has expanded the testing. You've heard the governor talk about testing. You've heard everybody talk. That's what we need to get in our community, in addition to the resources that we've lacked for so long. So, you know, we need to have, we're working with our local groups about finding housing for people reentering. You know, there's a mental health component that we need to deal with. Getting more testing other than just at hospital sites. Simply because in order to get to a hospital usually requires transportation, and then you've got the public transportation issue that many people face. So there are a variety of things that we are doing. We have seniors that are not technology savvy, right? Mm-hmm. And we still have to reach out to them. So my office, you know, does well-being checks. We do the calls. I talk weekly with my landlords or associations in apartment buildings to see, you know, is there a neighbor that needs some assistance? Do they need food? Can we help them get to any resources that they need?
Yeah, I know that all of you guys are doing so much. What I'd like to do is if we could, we'll save some of that, because I know that there are some questions that are going to be pointed right at you probably in the question and answer period. So thank you so much, Alderman Hairston.
Thank you.
Could we have Alderman King, if she's on now, can we add Alderman King to the discussion? Hello, Alderman. Can you take me off mute?
Going here, yep.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that the conference pulled this together in the past couple weeks, but and I noticed that right around the time we were pulling this together, I saw your town hall that you had with Senator Durbin and so many other people on. And I know that, you know, you have so much to share from all of the different discussions that you've had that you could bring to this, and you were at the top of mind when I thought about when we were putting this on. So I'd love for you to share with us some of the things that you might think that the community needs to hear, because I know that there's a lot of questions that we have.
Sure, certainly. First of all, thank you, Brian, for hosting us, and of course, thank you to the Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference for hosting us as well. I appreciate this. You know, the more information we can get out, the better, and the more questions that we can answer, the better. As you know, it's becoming, you know, even more difficult to stay connected. However, technology, I knew there was a reason for it. Technology, you know, is keeping us more tied together than ever. As Alderman Hairston mentioned, you know, there is a divide still between a generation of folks who don't readily have access to or may not know how to use this technology. And so, you know, we need to stay connected with those folks as well. But, you know, I appreciate technology. And as you said, you know, our office has dived right into using, I think, Zoom really as a communication tool. Mm-hmm. You know, we also stay connected with a lot of senior buildings and buildings that may not have access to technology kind of in an old-fashioned way, through phone calls, through mail, through email. But this has been, Zoom technology has been technology that we've used, and we've had the opportunity right away to reach out to small businesses because they were impacted immediately, as everybody knows. And so we held, before the one with Senator Durbin that you caught, we had probably about 120 of our local businesses on the call, trying to get them access to some of the resources that are out there that I'm sure we'll talk about, but the SBA resources, either with the PPP loans or the loans that can be used for other items outside of employees, and then the resiliency fund through the city and through the treasurer's office, as well as a myriad of other funds. And we've been also trying to keep track of them because, as you know, the SBA funds ran out. Although, I'm hopeful that there'll be a follow-up package in talking to Senator Durbin and obviously our congressman and Congressman Kelly, who's been very helpful. We know that there's a trailer bill. I think the Senate passed that today. And so the House, will see, where they're at. But we're very hopeful that funds will be trailing the ones that are already out there, because we know that folks are really still struggling. And so, we just want to be helpful and making sure people have access to resources to those communities that have been impacted disproportionately by this virus, particularly the African American community. We want to make sure that resources get to them. And so, we're actively and very intentional about making sure that we continue to communicate and try and do it in the most effective way to make sure that those resources get to those folks who need them the most.
One thing I was going to say, I went to your website. I've been getting your newsletter for a long time because I actually moved from the 4th Ward to the 5th Ward. But
we won't hold that against you. You moved with Alderman Harrison. You're in good.
Your website, you do have a very pretty exhaustive list of a bunch of resources. I would advise that everybody in the call, whether you live in Kenwood or Bronzeville or Hyde Park or wherever, I do think that your website is phenomenal, and I do want to say that. I want to move on only because the people behind us have piled up so many questions, and I know that they want to get their questions answered before mine. So, but I thank you so much, seriously. And I know you guys got virtual council in the morning, so you guys got to get ready for that. But and we'll rejoin you in just a couple minutes here.
Okay, thank you. I'll be here.
Now I think we have up next Representative Cam Buckner's representative. Oh no, actually we have Commissioner Lowry, Commissioner Bill Lowry. Is Commissioner Lowry on by chance? Commissioner, could you unmute yourself for me, please?
Okay.
How are you, sir? I think you remuted yourself. You were off for a moment, then it came back on. Okay, there we go.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I wanted to just touch on some of the resources from the county, as we go through this COVID-19 situation.
Yes, sir. I know you're chairman of the emergency management, so I knew that you would come.
I am. But first, I want to just share a little bit about our small businesses. A week ago, we did a tele-town hall for small businesses. We had Congresswoman Robin Kelly with us, Commissioner Donna Miller, and we were joined by Robert Bosteiner from SBA. So anyone can go to commissionerlowry.com and get the audio as well as the PowerPoint from that small business town hall. So I would encourage you to do it. Also, I want to share that all of our business enterprises will have their certifications extended by 6 months. So if you are an MBE, a WBE, any business enterprise, and your certification is up, you don't have to recertify. You don't have to incur those costs associated for at least 6 months. Also, relative to the county assessor, I want to share that the assessor has suspended the deadline for filing a property tax appeal. The assessor has also published a guide to property tax savings programs, which I think is something that all of us should be aware of at this point. And you can get that information at cookcountyassessor.com. The county treasurer is suspending property tax sales for now, so I wanted to pass that on. Wanted to give you an update relative to what's going on in the county jail. We now have about 4,000 detainees still in the jail. The nonviolent detainees are being allowed to go home if they are not positive relative to COVID-19. If a nonviolent detainee is positive but asymptomatic, they're being sent to alternative housing locations. There are about 600 that are available in different hotels throughout the county. And in some situations, those same individuals are going home, but their families are being afforded the opportunity to go to the alternative location so that they're not being exposed. And then for those nonviolent detainees who need hospitalization, they're being hospitalized. Let me also share, right now at Stroger as well as Provident, there is testing going on. And there's been testing going on for our first responders and our employees of Cook County Health. But now the testing is available for all of us if you have an order from a physician who is affiliated with Cook County. So I do want to make sure that that's known. This is the drive-through testing, yet walk-ups are also encouraged to come. But again, you need to have that order from a Cook County Health physician. I've come to learn today that very soon there'll be another Southside hospital that will be testing. And once that information is confirmed and we know the date that the testing will start, we'll make sure that we share that information with all of you on our various social media platforms. And again, all of the resources I'm talking about today, you can find at commissionerlowry.com. Let me also share a little bit about Provident. As many of you know, the emergency department, ICU, and operating room at Provident were closed for cleaning and refiguring. And they were all supposed to reopen on May 6th. I'm happy to report that the Provident Emergency Department actually reopened yesterday at 7 a.m. and it has been reconfigured. So when you go in and you have to register, we now are taking into account social distancing. Equally important for those who work there, including our nurses, their stations have been reconfigured so social distancing is allowed. So I'm happy about that. And I also want to note this. While the operating room remains closed and elective surgeries are not allowed anyway at this point, that area too is being reconfigured, will be reopened soon, as will the ICU. But all the other services provided by Provident remain functional, remain available for all of us in our community. So that's important to note. You know, earlier, Raquel Mckee, I think she hit it out of the park talking about the big issue relative to the disproportionate percentage of COVID-related deaths in the African-American community. This is the process of years and years of disinvestment, lack of, in many cases, having good food sources, healthcare, and the like. But at least one measure, even though it's short-term, that is now going to, I think, help us today, is the creation of the Cook County Black Chamber of Commerce Relief Fund. Seeded with $1 million through this fund, there'll be educational mailers which will be circulated, financial assistance for medical care when warranted, setting up additional testing locations, providing groceries to our seniors and to homes where young children are being housed. Masks and respirators will be provided to some African-American community hospitals, or I should say hospitals in African-American communities. And other types of funding will be available through the Cook County Black Chamber of Commerce Relief Fund. Also, relative to the southern suburbs, there is the Cook County Community Recovery Fund. This loan fund offers up to $20,000 to small businesses, as well as to independent contractors, some of the gig employees or workers that we heard about earlier. So if you are located in our southern suburbs, Cook County southern suburbs, you can apply for that as well. You know, earlier I heard, Brian, a lot of people saying, you know, we need to get out, we need to go someplace. And while I absolutely agree that we need to make sure when we go out, we're still wearing our masks and we're wearing gloves. In fact, on Sunday, I had to go downtown and I'd say I saw a lot of people out and maybe 10 to 15% had a mask, but about half of those people had a mask, but it wasn't on their nose or their mouth. Wow. So it's very important that when we're out, we're utilizing our protective equipment the right way. But there is an opportunity for some of us who want to get fresh air to go to our forest preserve locations. Some are still open. And if you go to fpdcc.com, That's forestpreservedistrict.cookcounty.com. You'll be able to see which locations remain open if in fact you want to go visit one of our locations. The last thing I want to touch on.
Okay, go ahead really quick. I know
Real
that,
fast.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this issue about rent and mortgage holiday is so important. I do want to share that right now Congress has two proposals that they're looking at. One would provide Americans over the age of 16 with a $2,000 monthly check to be utilized for this purpose. The other proposal would actually cancel rent and mortgage payments through the duration of the COVID-19 emergency. Landlords and mortgage companies would be covered through a fund managed by HUD. So I think it's important that not only I, but all of us also lean on our federal leaders so that we can have this type of legislation passed as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. I know that at times the people only see the city and the state and the county is so important. So I really appreciate it. Please do stick around until the end and for the questions if you do, if you can.
I've been here since 6 o'clock. I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, thank you so much. Can we have Representative Buckner on? I thank everybody for staying on. I know that as Commissioner Lowry just alluded to, we have 111 people on right now. Super thankful for that, 112. And I know it's been an hour and a half, but I promise you just wait. We'll try to get as many questions answered as possible. Representative Buckner, thank you so much for being with us, sir. I appreciate everything that you've been doing. I know that I've been seeing you, Senator Peters and Representative Tarver working together a lot lately, and I'd love for you to share anything that you think would be super relevant to this current pandemic in the community.
Yeah, well, Brian, thank you for doing this. Thank you for having me. Thank you to Ali, and then also to the rest of the conference for putting this together. You know, I sat here and listened to, I think I got 16 folks who spoke earlier about their personal experiences in this pandemic, and it really just served to color and to contextualize what's really going on here. This is a unprecedented crisis with real life implications, right? And so I think what we're doing on the state side, as I continue to work with my colleagues, both Senator Peters and Representative Tarver, and then our partners on the city and the county level as well, is to make sure that we can bring as much good information to the community as possible, and find ways to follow that up with action, right? So what I'm looking forward to here on this call is kind of gleaning some of that information, gleaning some of that real life practical aspect from the constituents on this call, you know, and to give answers where I have them, but where I don't have them, to find a way to those answers based on what the community needs. So thank you for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to the conversation continuing.
Absolutely. One thing before because I do want to make sure that we have time for questions. If you could, during the question and answer period, could you particularly address, I know that one of the breakout committees that you're on is on the education, K through 12, as well as higher education. Yep. And there's been a whole lot of talk about the need for more electronics and, you know, the 100,000 that CPS has been able to manage to get their hands on in the district. I'm sure you've thought a lot about this, but during the question and answer period, if you could find time to definitely address that, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Buckner. Can we have Representative Tarver on next, please?
Brian?
Yes.
I believe we're having some issues getting Representative Tarver on. Okay. We're going to try to work those out. Maybe if we could go to one of the other officials, and we'll try to get Representative Tarver on.
Very good. If Senator Peters is on, that would be great. Oh, there we go. Senator Peters, how you doing, sir?
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing so well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. When HPKCC started organizing this, I literally said, okay, everybody was scrambling saying, who can we get in? And I said, I know Senator Peters is going to be in. So thank you so much for making this happen. And, you know, I know that you had some other forums that I've been watching as well. I've been trying to check out so that I can try to guide this in a way so that you're not hitting the same talking points over and over, and maybe some people can research, your website. I saw that you've actually converted your personal website into a COVID-19 response. If anything you want to share,
Yeah.
a couple of minutes, and then we'll turn it over to Curtis Tarver.
So I'll just start off and say thank you to everyone who asked questions and expressed concerns about what's going on during this crisis and what's going to happen after this crisis. Thank you, HPKCC, for having me. And I'll first start and just say, one thing is both on our state side and on my political personal page, we've transitioned things over around, the COVID-19 response. What we've also done is added in regular senior phone banks. So we do those on Thursday nights. We call seniors, especially vulnerable populations, to check in on them. And oftentimes, people are doing okay, and they're just happy to know that there's a community who's calling folks and looking out for them. But we do also talk to people about housing and the issues that are going on with that. We talk to folks about groceries and what they need there. UI, unemployment insurance, and what they need there. And mostly what I notice is that there's a lot that we can do on the local level, on the state, the city and the county level. But it's very important that we get whatever we can from the federal level to help boost people's lives and help improve people's lives. We want people to stay in their homes. We want people to be able to have groceries. We want to be able to flatten the curve, and we want to make sure that we reduce healthcare disparities. Because if anything that this crisis has shown, it's a reflection of 30 years of disinvestment that has profoundly impacted people's lives. And what we're seeing is just, sort of showing something that's already existed for quite some time. And what we should do over the next 30 years is overturn that sort of history of systemic disinvestment so that people can thrive and live in their communities.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, I know that some of the callers may have heard all of the elected officials echo that point about the disinvestment. And I, at one time, was probably guilty of thinking that it was being overstated, but it can't be, because the people that are affected generation after generation by that lack of investment in our communities is showing up at times like this, and it's super unfortunate. One thing I would say before, if there's anything else you wanted to say, I know that the governor today, I heard him, we had saw that he had flew in a couple planes worth of PPE and got criticized from the federal government for doing it and adding it to the stockpile. But are there any plans, or have there been any talks? I know that you guys are officially can't be in session right now, but have there been any talks in terms of the legislature about a going back to work plan? Because I know that during the question and answer, that's one of the things that came up was, how do we phase this in? And I'd love for you, when Representative Tarver gets through, if you could please address that, I would really appreciate it, because I know that you've been pretty busy and involved in a lot of stuff at the state level. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you so much. Ali, is Representative Tarver on yet?
He is calling in at the moment, and he should be on shortly. So if he's
while we're waiting, I want to do a poll to just see how people found out about this event. So everyone, if you can just answer the poll while we're waiting for Rep. Tarver. And this is for people who can see the Zoom. So please answer how you found out about this event. It will really be helpful for us as we plan going forward. We'll do that for about another 10 seconds or so. A few more seconds, and then we'll close the poll. All right, we're going to close the poll here, and it looks like about 30% via email, 24 Facebook, Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference newsletter, word of mouth. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate that very much. And while we're waiting for Rep. Tarver, I would like to remind everyone that this is being sponsored by the Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference, www.hydepark.org. You can join our organization by becoming a member, and also like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, and check out our newsletter. Thanks so much.
Barbara, should we perhaps maybe move to the question and answer and Representative Tarver join us there if he's not on?
Absolutely, Brian. So what I'm going to do, everyone, the elected officials, we're all going to come on now and answer some questions that everyone has submitted in advance. So I'm going to do that. So please give us just a few seconds. Elected officials, if you can just raise your hands, I'll let you in. Thanks.
As we get prepared for this, Ali, our moderator for the evening, is going to go over some of the questions and make his way through as many of them as we possibly can. We're almost on schedule. We went a couple minutes over, but I still feel good about where we are. I know that some of these questions can be answered by any official. So I would ask that if someone has answered it poignantly enough, that we don't become duplicative in our responses, so that we can try to make it through as many of those as possible. Ali, I'd love for you to be able to start going through that list of questions that you have, please.
Yes. Well, once again, thank you for all being here. We're so pleased to have you with us. And we're going to jump right into it. And while we are waiting for Representative Tarver to call in, we'll just start with our first question. We took questions submitted from community members in advance. And so our first question is from Gary from the Hyde Park Village Men's Group. And his question to everyone is, how is guidance to and compliance by stores being handled? And what do you suggest? What can be better done to get guidance out and compliance encouraged in various parts of the city? I will open up the floor, and then Brian, you can help as we transition to back and forth between our officials who want to answer this question for the audience.
Excuse me, I believe Rep. Tarver is on the line. Rep. Tarver, can you please confirm that?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but I'm on. Thank you very much.
All right, welcome, Representative Tarver. Thank you so much for being here. Brian, if I'm going to pass it off to you, we can start with the question, and then Brian, if you want to move into Representative Tarver as well.
Yeah, let me pull up that screen. I thought that was my way of asking you to pull it up because I didn't have it in front of me. If you have it, Representative Tarver, we're actually in the Q&A session already. We just wanted to jump in to get as many of these questions as.
No, that's perfect. I've been listening. I don't have more to contribute than my colleagues have so far. I'll be happy for the questions.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And did you hear the first question that we was just asked, Representative Tarver?
Yes, I did. I printed them out, so thank you.
Okay. So the floor is yours.
Yeah. So I think Alderman Harrison or Alderman King, either one of you would probably better to answer that for your communities. How are you guys dealing with stores and dealing with people social distancing in those stores and handling that? Oh, you're muted still. You're still muted, Alderman Harrison.
Okay. We have a lot of very active groups in the neighborhood, and like talking with the owner of local market, that's the largest grocer, and with the University of Chicago, with Trader Joe's, about the need for social distancing. I know that they have put in the markers online where you are 6 feet apart. I think we just have to keep reminding people. We have to keep reminding people it's about education. So it's about signs. We've got some ground teams, people on the ground reminding people to socially distance. We have some groups that have been handing out masks. So we have been working, and if people, I think people have been really good that if they observe a business that is not honoring it, they will give a call and
Yeah.
we will send somebody out or we'll go ourselves. Absolutely.
Alderman King, do you have anything to add to that? Oh, you're muted. Please unmute.
Unmute myself. There you go. Yeah, I would agree with what Alderman Harrison said. I guess I would add that, you know, in some instances we've seen bad actors, let's just say. I think we noticed some best practices. We noticed some best practices actually happening in the Fifth Ward, and so we encouraged some of those store owners and managers to adopt some of those. We actually went up to a store where we saw that there was no possible way for people to distance themselves with as many people that were in the store. So no matter what the shoppers did, it was just too many people in there. And so we encouraged the store to adopt, you know, having some checks and balances, making sure that there was somebody at the beginning, at the front of the store, you know, having a store maximum, and that there was somebody counting people who went out. And those are the types of things that we've been doing because, you know, as we've all said, you know, there's been different amounts of communication, and we had to be intentional about making sure that people are safe.
Very good. Ali, can we have the next question?
Sure. So, all right. So our next question is from Julia from the Hyde Park Neighborhood Club. And she has two questions. We'll try to keep to one question per sender. And if we have more time, we'll get back to the next one. So it's a nonprofit for which I am a board member, keeps receiving unemployment insurance claim notification letters after the reply due date to contest claims that seem unfair. For example, one of the claims is from a staff member who left in mid-2019 for another job. We need to be able to respond. We've missed the deadline to respond before we even receive the claim notification. This nonprofit is keeping many of its employees at work during the pandemic, and it cannot afford to pay claims that seem not right. What can we do?
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, Senator Peters, were you not talking about unemployment insurance? Did you mention something about that?
Not about that explicitly. It's more about the fact that when the issue that's going on is 1099, the website is overwhelmed, a whole host of other issues. This seems to be about someone a year ago filing for unemployment and a deadline.
Okay.
I'm guessing they need to reach out to one of our offices to connect them to help them get through this or whatever issue. It doesn't seem like it's not tied to the issue that's been going on throughout the state that we're trying to deal with.
Okay, so I would say, Julia, go ahead, Representative Buckner.
I want to jump in real quick on that. So what I found out today is that for certain groups, including like nonprofit and faith-based organizations who are not in the normal kind of corporate or large business structure, what the Illinois Department of Employment Security is doing is that they are taking some of these unemployment claims from folks during the COVID time and erasing them off of the state rolls and providing federal stimulus money that the state is still holding to relieve some of these people. So if this person is claiming that they're unemployed based on COVID and the state is able to realize in some way that they're not, then there may be another process there. But just piggybacking on what Senator Peters said, I think all of our offices, whoever they want to reach out to, we can do that. And we have a resource guide that can help with that. But I think all of us are on the state side will be able to connect them with the right folks.
Okay, very good. Ali, can we go to the next
Let
question?
me just add, if I could just quickly add, I have a number, 1-800-244-5631. That's the number for IDES.
Very good. Thank you so much for that, Commissioner Lowry.
Could you repeat that one more time, Commissioner Lowry?
Sure. 1-800-244-5631.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, we'll move on to the next question, Brian.
Yes, please.
Okay. So our next question is from Helena, and I believe it's from Helena, who was on with us today. And the question is, state law prohibits any Illinois city, including Chicago, from controlling or freezing rents. With so many people unable to make ends meet, do you support Governor Pritzker using his executive powers under the Illinois Emergency Management Act to repeal this rent control ban? Do you still support him enacting a rent and mortgage freeze during the duration of the crisis?
I can tell you, I know that every every one of you has something to add to that. If we could, I know that it's almost impossible. Could we have one from the city, one from the state, and Commissioner Lowry, if you have something you'd like to add, either of you, it does not matter, whichever wants to add to that.
I'll just go since I'm like the lift the ban person in this whole group. So I'm whatever. Here's what I'll say is I talk to folks. My biggest concern is about executive power when it comes to this type of issue. I'm more concerned about losing, as I don't know, for me as a legislator who wants to pass bills, I don't know if I want the executive to have that much power. I think it's a different discussion if you talk about emergency powers for a temporary solution around something. That's a whole nother conversation. That is something I've talked to folks about, but it really depends on the idea of if something is temporary or if something is actually to sustain longer than an emergency. And to me, that's sort of the thing I want to, sort of dig in on is if it's temporary, that's something we can talk about. But if it's something to completely get rid of legislation and that the executive branch, which is a co-equal branch of the legislator, then gets involved in, I'm not a big fan of that because I passed 13 bills last year, and I definitely don't want a future governor to think that they could use executive power to overturn a bill of mine. So I think it's really more about that gray. So
Agree. Alderman Harrison, I saw you pep up a little bit. Don't forget to unmute yourself, please. Unmute yourself.
Well, no, I think Senator Peters, hit it right on the head. That those are the conversations, those are the things that, we're talking about. But I also recognize that while we are doing this, there are two things. There's one related to COVID-19, and then the other is related just to the housing situation in the city of Chicago. And so I think we need to balance and move on both accords, but recognize that the two are separated.
Very good. Very good. Commissioner Lowry, is there something you wanted to add to that?
Just as I said earlier, I think that the issue needs to be addressed. And I think the most direct way to do it now is to seize the opportunity we have with these two proposals, which are floating through Congress at this point. So I think all of us need to touch base with our federal representatives and just make sure they know how important this is.
Very good. Ali, in question 4, could you read the second part of that question, please?
Sure. So our next question comes from Laura, who said the following: there has been a lot of press about what Chicago is doing for the homeless, but as a housing advocate, I can tell you it's not nearly enough. People in shelters are incredibly sick and being turned away from hotels that are supposed to serve them. What can the state do to move Mayor Lori to make the CHA lease 1,885 vacant and ready to move in units to at-risk people right now?
I would ask Alderman King if you could address that. I would first, though, Commissioner Lowry, I know that President Preckwinkle talked about the alternative housing program that addresses some of these things, and you guys have been dealing with the homeless as well. Could you talk about that before we turn it over to Alderman King?
Yeah, no, the alternative housing has become one of the, I think, most effective ways for us to contribute at the county level to the social distancing and isolation that's needed. And that effort is being extended to the homeless community. And it's going to continue, I think, just to really blossom, because we're getting partners added each and every day from hotels and different places. We're reopening closed hospitals for this very purpose, such as Metro South, and there are 2 others, one in Elgin, and there's a third. So we're going to continue trying to ensure that we're able to put folks where they need to be at a hospital if they have an acute issue going on with COVID-19. If it's more a watch what's going on, alternative housing, and then if individuals are able to return to their regular homes, then of course that's something that right now individuals are being told to do.
Yep. Alderman King.
Yeah, so I just want to add to the last question that I'm certainly in support of relief for renters and mortgage holders, and agree with Commissioner Lowry that we should be pushing at the federal level, but there's also things we're doing at the city. There's housing ordinance that I'm interested in supporting that's up. In terms of the CHA and the units there, that's something that myself, I believe even Alderman Hairston may have been on that call with the CHA that we had, and we asked and questioned them about those units, and they said that the units that are open are ones that aren't livable, right? They're in disrepair, or they haven't, so they're not just laying there empty just to be empty, but they're there because they're in some type of disrepair. That being said, we definitely need to make sure that our populations that are being disproportionately impacted by COVID, again, exposing all of the things, as Senator Peters said, that have been plaguing those communities for years. So our homeless population, disproportionately our African American population, we do need to find places for them. I think the city is doing a pretty good job in terms of trying to find alternative housing in hotels and such. But if there are specific instances, I'd like to hear more about those coming up. But I can't speak for the CHA, but I know we asked them that particular question, and that was their response about those units.
Very good. Ali, could we get, I know that we only have a couple more minutes here. Want to wrap it up here in the next 2 or 3 minutes before we give our closing comments. If we could try to get the A portion of question 5, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I think we have a time for probably a couple more questions. We'd also love to hear from Representatives Tarver and Buckner as well.
Yeah.
So this was a comment, an anonymous sender, but and there's a few questions, but they're all kind of around the same topic. Will there be any mask and glove giveaways? If so, when and where? Or is there a website you can direct residents to purchase masks or gloves? Or do any local businesses have them for sale?
So I'll take a stab at this. I'm not aware of any local businesses that has, PPE essentially for sale. As far as the website, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. I know there is a COVID website with the state that has an incredible amount of information, and maybe one of the aldermen know what it is for the city as well. But I haven't seen anything specific about a mask or glove giveaway. I will tell you that I've had a few people reach out over the last several days, typically lobbyists, who say they have clients who want to partner with nonprofits to do things within the district. So I'm trying to field and see exactly what that means. One did say specifically that they wanted to provide masks and gloves, but I need to get more details from them about what exactly that entails and who they're looking to partner with.
I know there are a number of organizations who have, as they've gotten materials and supplies in, they've gone out, but they obviously don't last for more than a couple of hours. And I'm not sure if they have a bunch of leeway on the front end or a bunch of lead time on the front end to know when they're coming. But I know my office is working with a bunch of our community groups and folks to try to figure out when that stuff's coming in so we can be able to make sure that the people in the community are abreast of that. So as we compile that information, we will continue to send it out through our newsletter and social media. And once again, like I said, we have a resource guide that's on our website, and I posted it on social media, I think yesterday, that kind of spells out all of those resources that are available for folks who need those things immediately.
Yeah.
Ali, if I could, go ahead, Senator P. I was going to ask you.
I'll just add a thing here, which is a lot of folks, as Pam and Curtis have said, have reached out. They want to be helpful. But I really want us all to know how much the president has failed all of us on the local level when it comes to this, compared to other places. Like, we're going to be as helpful as we can be. But I'll give you an example. In South Korea, you go to a drive-through test, they give you an entire package, an entire care package. It involves PPE to take care of you. I'm talking to folks in Spain, not a rich, well-to-do country after the Great Recession in 2008. They give you the same thing. And here we have a president that's literally having us compete against each other all over the place. And so we're trying to do the best we can. I know we are, but it is a fact that we've had an incompetent president when it comes to handling this crisis, and has left us in a very desperate state, in which we have a governor who's, as you said earlier, bringing in shipments to help folks out. So I think it's important to give a context that for all the work that we do, and we do great work, it would be great if we had a federal government and a president who understood how to manage this crisis effectively and with care and with empathy.
Ali, if we could, instead of going back to the list, since we only have time maybe for one more, I know that one of the things at the top of the list that everybody's been asking about was about the learning going on at home, e-learning, dealing with devices, and obviously people struggling with childcare, all sorts of things. And I know both the aldermen have talked about that. But if we could just get something from a couple of you guys dealing with e-learning and dealing with what's the plan, because all of the current stockpile of resources seems to be exhausted.
And if I could just add to that really quickly, Brian, but also, when we're talking about education, not just in our own community, but across the city, dealing with the inequities that we're finding across the city with, people's access to technology. And we want to make sure that all of our community members are being able to have resources to get access to the same types of opportunities, and in this case, technology. So yes, please, if you guys could speak to that, that would be great.
All right, I will try to jump in real quick. I mean, this is something that we have been raising. It started with the digital divide. We just weren't heard. I have been speaking on this for 21 years. What I will tell you is that we have been working with Xfinity, Comcast. They have an essential program for SNAP participants. What we have to do is we have to educate people. They have to call. If you're not on any kind of assistance, they do have a program for you. We talked with Dr. Janice Jackson about that as well. The goal is to get everybody all that they need, because if I have a laptop and no internet, that doesn't help me. And so while we have dragged our feet on getting these to the schools, particularly on the south and west sides, now is the time to make sure that it happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anybody else?
Yeah.
I think
Go ahead, Sophia, sorry.
That's okay. You want to go here, the state perspective first, and then come back to me?
You go ahead, I'll go after you.
Okay, thank you. So, just to piggyback off of what Alderman Hairston was saying, I think, obviously this has exposed kind of every wrong that's going on in the country. Really has. It will give us an opportunity to really see those things. Education and that the divide that occurs there, isn't immune to that as well. What we've been doing is really just checking in with our principals, with our LSCs, to see how the rollout has been. For the most part, they said that it's been going pretty well. I think, in terms of, the internet access and families not having access, one of the tools that people have been using is I think it's a Bluetooth access from your phones. Sometimes you can use that to throw Wi-Fi. So that's one of the things that people have been saying that they've been using. And just really, it's still the same child who you were already concerned about. Now you're concerned about those, threefold, because the disparities are showing up, even more. And one of the things we don't talk about is during this pandemic, who's taking care of kids now if mom has to go to work. So sometimes those families, those kids are becoming, the caretaker, the cook, and all of those things. So how is learning, actually happening? And so again, it's exposed who's essential. We know our teachers are so essential. I've known that for some time, but now the rest of the world knows that teachers are so essential, and that, they need to even work harder to try and educate that child who already had, some disparity, mitigating their education. And so the one beautiful thing, I think, if you can say, that has come out of this is it really exposes and shows us, that all of those folks that we have taken for granted are folks that are essential, and that we need in order for the world to run. And so, at least I'm glad, there's a conversation that's being had around that, but certainly, this impact on education will be a conversation that we're going to have from years to come. And that data will probably be staggering, unfortunately.
Yeah, Representative Buckner, I would say we have less than 60 seconds and we want to give a closeout. If you could add on to that, because I know that all of you guys have so much to say, but I remember I asked you to speak directly to this if you could.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. So this is extremely important, and it's troubling when we look at how this is affecting our young people. Actually, during this call from about 6 o'clock on, I've been multitasking and texting with two of the principals in my district, one in Bronzeville and one in South Shore, who are having issues with the technology, right, with the devices that they're getting from CPS. One has issues where they're not working and they don't have enough, and the other one has an issue where the devices themselves are just subpar. They're not Chromebooks, they're not pads, they're pretty much cell phones, right? And so we're asking our children to be able to compete and to be able to stay on par during this crisis without giving them the right tools. And the internet, the digital divide, the broadband gap is another piece that's huge. We see it, right? We see it. Chicago is the largest city with the largest disparity in internet access between its communities. And we see these numbers in so many other ways play out. I think Inglewood has a 56% non-connectivity rate, which is crazy when you think about a neighborhood a stone's throw from the pretty Google edifice down in Fulton Market, or just in a city where we were going to give Amazon the world to come and bring an internet-based company here that folks don't have internet. All right, so there's something that we've got to do this on coming out of this crisis. We've got to find ways for the community from a business standpoint and the folks in government to find a way to partner and make sure we address these things, because we are putting our young people at a huge disadvantage, and then we're going to ask them on the back end to compete with folks all across the world, and it's not fair.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say thank you all. I know, Ali, if I'm correct, we're going to turn it over to Barbara here, but I would just say one last thing. Guys, please go to their websites. One thing I mentioned, and I don't want to overstate it, Commissioner Laurie has been on, and a lot of times we only look to the state or the city. The county has a lot of resources. Super knowledgeable man. He's been involved with a lot of things. I do invite everybody to go check out his website and check out all their websites, because you're going to get a whole lot more information and follow up with them directly.
Yes. Well, thank you, Brian. And so, yes, that wraps up our final question for the night. I want to thank all of our participants. I want to thank all of our elected officials, Alderman Hairston, Alderman King, Commissioner Lowry, Representative Buckner, Representative Tarver, Senator Peters. Thank you all so much for being here. We invite you to participate in our future meetings and forums of the Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference. It's been my pleasure to be your MC tonight. Before we wrap up, I want to turn it over to my fellow Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference board member, Barbara Moreno-Pechol, who will close us out for the evening. Barbara?
Hi, everyone, and thank you to all the elected officials. Hello. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here tonight. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us. These are important issues, and we will be sending out, for the elected officials, we'll be sending out your website so that folks know where to go to access those resources. So thank you, everyone, and please join us, hydepark.org/join. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and all of the social media platforms, and join our newsletter. We really want to hear from you, and if you want to learn more, come to our next board meeting on May 7th in a few weeks. So thank you all very much, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Stay safe.